Well, Germany is passing laws to deport Hamas supporters in a tough yet sensible approach. Yet the Albanese government is doing the precise opposite. They're bringing people into Australia who may support Hamas, and security agencies aren't being given an opportunity to do background checks. That utterly breathtaking revelation from ASIO boss Mike Burgess yesterday.
Do they pose a security threat?
So for all immigration, including when you're balancing humanitarian needs, security checks are critically important. There are processes in place, and I can assure your audience that when things get referred to ASIO, we deal with them effectively. Of course, there might be times when they didn't get referred to us in time. Once we become aware of them, we're able to do the assessments and deal with them effectively.
So Mike Burgess there admitting not all of the Palestinian visas were being sent to ASIO for background checks. It's quite the revelation. He said very clearly there might be times when they didn't get referred to ASIO in time. Now that's putting the Albanese government on notice should there be an attack. Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Paterson was outraged about the lack of security checks today.
I was astonished by the revelation that it does not appear that every single person coming out of a war zone controlled by a terrorist organisation is not being referred to ASIO for a security assessment. Of course, every single one of those people should be referred. And on top of that, the Department of Home Affairs and the officials reviewing those visa applications should be using the character provisions of the Migration Act to reject the application of anyone who is a supporter of a terrorist organisation.
So what happens then when these Palestinians who pose national security concerns, if they do, are already in Australia? Well, Tony Burke has said that no one will be sent back to Gaza. He says no government in its right mind would send people back to Gaza, and he's indicating that they will stay in Australia permanently. And this is despite Anthony Albanese promising voters that the visas were only temporary. It shows how comfortable Albanese is blatantly lying to Australians. Now, this is an extremely serious issue. Hamas supporters being flown into Australia from the front line of Gaza, at taxpayer expense, by the way, could threaten our national security and our safety in a dangerous way. James Paterson today asked what sort of Australia we actually want to live in.
Hamas is a listed terrorist organisation. It has political objectives which it believes should be achieved through violence. And anybody who supports using violent means to achieve political objectives is not welcome in Australia and should not come to Australia. But if you support using attacks like the 7th of October, which killed the largest number of Jews since the end of the Holocaust, 1,200 people on one day and kidnapped hundreds more, then I don't think you should come to this country. I mean, we should ask ourselves, will our country be stronger if we bring Hamas supporters in? Will we be more united? Will we be more cohesive? Will our problems of anti-Semitism be better, or will they be worse?
Such good points. Now, I first raised concerns about this issue in November last year. And then I revealed on this show that young men are being flown into Australia who support the October 7 attacks and who sympathise with Hamas. Now, James Paterson spoke about these revelations today with Peter Stefanovic, and he said that security agencies should at the very least do the research that we did.
Now, your colleague Shari Markson did a desktop social media research on some of the applicants for visas as part of that cohort, and she was able to identify people who publicly supported Hamas. If she can find them, I assure you the intelligence function at the Home Affairs Department and ASIO are more than capable of finding them if they're asked to do so, but it appears that this government has not asked them to do so.
It's appalling. Now, technically, Australians who do support Hamas, a listed terrorist organisation, could face prosecution. But the fact that these laws aren't being used means support for terrorism is becoming normalised, condoned, and even accepted at universities, on our streets, and in government agencies. It seems to me that supporting Hamas is apparently not a problem for Anthony Albanese or Penny Wong or Tony Burke. It appears to me that they don't care that they're bringing to Australia immigrants who support barbaric terror attacks, especially at a time when our social fabric is fragile and concerns about terrorism are rising. It's sheer hypocrisy, given Albanese himself said that social cohesion should be nourished. His word, nourished. Mike Burgess even admitted yesterday that it wasn't necessarily a problem if immigrants supported terrorism.
If they've expressed any support or sympathy for Hamas, is that a problem?
Depends on the what that looks like. If they're supportive because they want their homeland, if they're giving financial support or material aid, that can be a problem. And obviously we take each case on its merits in the context of the information we have before us.
But if it's just rhetorical support?
If it's just rhetorical support and they don't have an ideology or support for a violent extremism ideology, then that's not a problem. If they have a support for that ideology, that will be a problem.
That's a pretty sad response, given the extreme social disarray that we're experiencing. It prompted again this strong rebuke from Patterson today.
Mike Burgess also said that it is possible that political supporters or sympathisers of terrorist organisations like Hamas could be brought into Australia, that it wouldn't violate Australian law. And in that, he very accurately described the status quo under the Albanese government. Now, it is not the task of intelligence agency chiefs to set policy. That is the task of politicians and governments. And it seems clear under the Albanese government's watch that they have not asked the department or our intelligence agencies to make sure that there are no terrorist supporters or sympathisers among the cohort of Palestinians being brought to Australia. Let me be very clear. Under a Peter Dutton-led coalition government, the acceptable number of Hamas supporters to come to Australia is zero. And we'll take whatever steps are necessary to make sure that that's the case.
And of course he's right. I mean, that shouldn't even be controversial. The correct number of people who support Hamas who enter our country should be zero. Our terror threat level is rising. There's more than a 50% chance of a terror attack in the next 12 months. Yet the Albanese government is literally flying Hamas sympathisers into our country at taxpayers' expense. It's lunacy, it's insanity, it's an inexplicable disregard for the safety of Australians. Germany is booting out Hamas supporters while Australia is flying them in. It beggars belief. We need an immediate return to political leadership that puts national security and social cohesion front and centre. Australia is fast becoming unrecognisable under the Albanese government, and they just don't give a damn about our safety.